Level 1. The Heir of Rome. You open your eyes to the sound of sandals striking polished marble. You don't know it yet, but one decision made before you were born has already determined the rest of your life. You are not an ordinary Roman boy. You are the son of the most powerful man in the known world. You have never bought food. You have never worried about where you will sleep. You have never wondered whether tomorrow will be safe. You simply expect servants to open every door before you reach it. You expect tutors to answer every question. You expect senators to lower their heads when your father enters a room. That has been your entire world. You spend your mornings studying history, philosophy, and military campaigns inside enormous marble halls. You memorize the victories of Scipio. You learn why Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon. You trace the borders of an empire that stretches farther than you can imagine. You learn where the Rhine forms Rome's northern frontier. You study why Egypt's grain keeps the capital alive. You discover how roads, aqueducts, and disciplined legions hold together lands that speak different languages and worship different gods. You are taught that Rome is not held together by luck. It is held together by order. You are told every single day that Rome was built by discipline. You are told that weak rulers destroy civilizations. You are told that an emperor does not belong to himself. He belongs to Rome. You hear those words so often that they stop sounding like lessons. They begin sounding like destiny. You still think you have years before any of it matters. You think your father will rule forever. You think you still have time to make mistakes. You are wrong, because while you practice speeches inside the palace, while you race horses across the imperial gardens, while you complain about another long lesson from another old philosopher, history is already walking toward you. And history never asks whether you're ready. You spend your afternoons wandering through palace courtyards filled with marble statues of Rome's greatest leaders. You stop beneath the towering figure of Augustus. You look up at Julius Caesar. You wonder what it must have felt like to command armies that conquered half the known world. To you, they are legends carved from stone. To your teachers, they are examples. Every statue comes with a lesson. Every lesson comes with a warning. Power can build an empire. Pride can destroy one. You don't fully understand the difference yet. You still think greatness is measured by victories alone. Your tutors know better. They teach you rhetoric before breakfast. They teach you law before midday. They teach you military formations before sunset. One day, you argue philosophy with scholars from Greece. The next, you watch veteran generals explain how a single mistake on the battlefield can cost 20,000 lives. Nothing in your education is accidental. Everything is preparing you for something you cannot yet see. You simply don't realize it. You believe you're receiving the finest education because you're the emperor's son. The truth is far heavier. You're being educated because one day the empire may belong to you. Sometimes your father invites you to accompany him during meetings with senators. You stand quietly near the edge of the chamber. You rarely speak. You simply observe. You watch ambitious men praise him in public, then criticize one another the moment he leaves. You begin to notice that politics is another battlefield. Only the weapons are words. You see governors arrive from distant provinces carrying reports from Britannia, Hispania, Syria, and Africa. Some bring gifts. Some bring warnings. Some bring problems only the emperor can solve. Your father listens far more than he speaks. When he finally gives an order, the entire room obeys without hesitation. At the time, it seems effortless. Years later, you'll realize how much discipline is hidden behind calm authority. Outside the palace walls, Rome never sleeps. Merchants crowd the markets. Blacksmiths hammer glowing iron. Builders raise temples toward the sky. Children chase one another through narrow streets. Thousands cheer inside the Circus Maximus. 50,000 voices roar inside the Colosseum. The city feels immortal. You believe it always will. You never imagine that the fate of all those people could someday rest in your hands. For now, you are still allowed to be young. You laugh with friends. You compete during riding lessons. You celebrate festivals without worrying who organized them. You admire the imperial guard without wondering whether they would one day swear loyalty to you instead of your father. Life feels simple, safe, predictable. Then, one evening, as the sun disappears behind the rooftops of Rome, your father pauses beside you on a palace balcony overlooking the city. He doesn't look at you, he looks at Rome. The empire, he says quietly, is heavier than it appears. You wait for him to explain. He never does. At the time, you think he's talking about politics, or war, or taxes. You nod politely and forget the conversation. You have no idea those words will return to you sooner than anyone expected. Because somewhere beyond the palace, beyond the cheering crowds, Beyond the marble temples and triumphal arches, time is already moving toward the moment that will end your childhood forever. And when that moment arrives, Rome will stop looking at you as the emperor's son. It will begin asking whether you deserve to become the next emperor. Level 2. The day everything changes. You wake before sunrise because something feels different. You hear hurried footsteps outside your chambers. You notice servants whispering instead of speaking. You notice soldiers standing where they have never stood before. You step into the corridor. Nobody smiles. You walk farther. Nobody explains anything. You feel the silence before you understand it. Even the palace, once alive with the sounds of servants and officials beginning another day, now feels strangely hollow. Then you see your mother's face. You have never seen fear look so controlled. She walks toward you slowly. She doesn't cry. She doesn't scream. She simply places both hands on your shoulders. For a long moment, she cannot bring herself to speak. When she finally does, her voice is calm, almost too calm. Your father is dead. You hear every word. You understand none of them. You stare past her toward the emperor's chambers. You expect the doors to open. You expect your father to walk out laughing. You expect someone to tell you this is all a misunderstanding. Nobody does. You keep waiting anyway. Minutes pass. Nothing changes. The doors remain closed. The silence grows heavier. You suddenly realize something terrifying. The strongest man in the empire disappeared overnight. The man whose orders moved entire legions, whose voice silenced the Senate, whose name was feared beyond Rome's borders, is simply gone. If death could reach him, then it could reach anyone, even you. Before you can gather your thoughts, palace physicians quietly leave the emperor's chambers. None of them meet your eyes. Behind them, priests carrying bowls of burning incense begin walking toward the room. You have seen those rituals before. Never for your father, never for an emperor. The truth becomes impossible to escape. Word spreads through the palace with astonishing speed. Servants stop working. Officials lower their heads. Even the Praetorian guards stand in complete silence, their spears perfectly still beneath the towering marble columns. Outside the palace, Rome has not yet heard the news. Merchants begin opening their shops. Children race through the streets. The markets slowly fill with life. For a few precious moments, the greatest city on earth continues as though nothing has happened. You almost envy them. Because inside these walls, your world has already ended. You are no longer thinking like a son. Without realizing it, you have already started thinking like an emperor. Then another thought enters your mind. It is colder than grief. If the throne is now empty, someone will try to claim it. You suddenly understand why the palace feels so different. This is no longer just a place of mourning. It has become a place of waiting. Waiting to see who will wear the purple. Waiting to see who the Praetorian Guard will follow. Waiting to see whether Rome's next emperor will unite the empire or tear it apart before the funeral fires have even burned out. And somewhere inside the palace, while you are still trying to accept your father's death, power has already begun moving toward you. Level 3. The First Throne. You barely have time to mourn. You barely have time to think. Rome refuses to wait. Before your father's funeral has even ended, messengers begin arriving from every corner of the empire. You watch governors enter the palace carrying sealed reports. You watch generals arrive wearing polished armor instead of mourning robes. You watch senators gather in quiet circles, their conversations stopping the moment you walk past. You quickly realize something no tutor ever taught you. An empty throne never stays empty for long. You spend the next several days surrounded by rituals older than the empire itself. You watch priests burn fragrant incense before the household gods. You watch your father's body wrapped in the finest linen and dressed one final time in the purple of an emperor. You walk behind the funeral procession through streets lined with silent citizens. Thousands bow as the procession passes. Thousands more whisper your name. Not because they know you, but because they know what comes next. You are no longer simply the emperor's son. You are Rome's future. On the 7th morning, before the first rays of sunlight reach the palace, servants awaken you. You do not dress yourself. They do. They carefully remove the simple white tunic of your youth. For a brief moment, you stand in silence. You realize you will never wear it again. Attendants place a fresh white tunic over your shoulders. A magnificent imperial purple cloak is fastened across your chest, with an engraved golden brooch bearing the imperial eagle. The fabric feels heavier than it looks, not because of its weight, but because of everything it represents. Another servant kneels before you, holding a polished golden laurel wreath. You stare at it. Yesterday, it rested upon your father's head. Today, it belongs to you. The high priest steps forward. Without speaking, he gently places the wreath upon your head. The room falls completely silent. Then, every person inside the chamber kneels. Not one, not some, every single one. You suddenly understand something that no lesson, no philosophy, and no military exercise could ever teach. The boy they once knew no longer exists. From this moment forward, every person who enters this room will see only the emperor. Great bronze trumpets suddenly echo across the palace. Their powerful notes roll over the rooftops of Rome like thunder. The announcement has begun. The Eternal City has a new ruler. You walk slowly toward the palace balcony overlooking the forum. Every step feels heavier than the last. The massive bronze doors swing open. Morning sunlight floods the marble floor. Then you see them. Thousands upon thousands of Romans fill the streets below. Merchants, soldiers, priests, noble families, children sitting on their fathers' shoulders. Veteran legionaries standing shoulder to shoulder with ordinary laborers. Every eye turns toward you. For several long seconds, no one speaks. Then one voice shouts your title. Another joins. Then another. Within moments, the entire city erupts. Augustus! 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 The sound crashes against the palace walls like waves against a cliff. You raise your hand. The crowd slowly falls silent. You don't speak. You simply look across the city your father once ruled. In that moment, you finally understand what he meant when he said the empire was heavier than it appeared. The purple robe is magnificent. The laurel wreath is beautiful. The throne is glorious. But none of them carry the true weight of being emperor. That weight rests entirely on your decisions. As the cheers continue below, an elderly advisor quietly steps beside you. Without looking at the crowd, he speaks softly enough that only you can hear. Your Majesty, winning the throne is the easiest part. Keeping it is what history remembers. You glance toward the Senate House, standing proudly beyond the forum. Behind those marble walls, hundreds of powerful men are already waiting. Some will swear loyalty. Some will test your judgment. Some will smile while secretly hoping you fail. Tomorrow, you will enter the Senate for the very first time as emperor. And before the day is over, you will discover that Rome is not ruled by crowns or ceremonies or applause. It is ruled by decisions. Level 4. Blood and Steel. You quickly discover that wearing the purple robe is the easiest part of being emperor. Keeping it is another matter entirely. You spend your mornings listening to senators. You spend your afternoons reading reports from distant provinces. You spend your nights wondering which report is hiding the truth. Then one message changes everything. You unroll a sealed military dispatch bearing the imperial eagle. The northern frontier is under attack. Germanic tribes have crossed the Rhine. Roman villages are burning. A legion has suffered heavy losses. The Senate immediately begins arguing. Some demand peace. Some demand revenge. Some quietly hope you will stay safely inside Rome. You make your decision before anyone finishes speaking. You will lead the campaign yourself. The chamber falls silent. You watch experienced generals exchange uncertain glances. Some admire your courage. Others mistake it for inexperience. You leave Rome before sunrise. Behind you, the Eternal City slowly disappears beneath the morning mist. Ahead of you, thousands of miles of frontier await. You spend weeks riding with the legions. For the first time in your life, you sleep beneath open skies instead of painted palace ceilings. You eat coarse bread beside ordinary soldiers. You drink from the same rivers they do. You march through endless forests where sunlight barely reaches the ground. Your white ceremonial robes are replaced by practical military clothing beneath your imperial armor. The polished marble floors of the palace become muddy roads. The quiet halls of Rome become camps filled with the sound of hammering blacksmiths, marching boots, and sharpening swords. You begin to understand why Rome was built by soldiers, long before it was ruled by emperors. Each evening, you walk through the camp without announcing yourself. You hear legionaries laughing around their fires. You hear letters being read aloud from wives and children waiting hundreds of miles away. You hear young recruits pretending they are not afraid. For the first time, the empire no longer feels like lines drawn across a map. It feels like people. At dawn, the scouts return. The enemy is close. You climb a small hill overlooking the valley. Thousands of Roman shields glimmer beneath the rising sun. Across the open ground, warriors gather beyond the trees. The air becomes perfectly still. You realize that every soldier is watching you, not because of your crown, because of your next command. You slowly draw your sword. You raise it toward the sky. The legion answers with a deafening roar that rolls across the valley like thunder. In that moment, you stop feeling like the boy who inherited an empire. You begin feeling like the man expected to defend it. The battle lasts until sunset. Steel crashes against steel. Arrows darken the sky. War cries echo through the forest. When the fighting finally ends, Rome still holds the frontier. The soldiers cheer your name. They no longer see you as a young emperor. They see you as their commander. But victory has a dangerous way of changing everything. As you ride back through the cheering camp, you notice one of your senior generals watching you in complete silence. He does not celebrate, he does not smile, because you have just learned the first law of Rome. An emperor who wins the army's loyalty also earns the jealousy of powerful men back home. Tomorrow, you will discover that some battles are fought with swords. The most dangerous ones are fought with whispers. Level 5. The Daggers in the Dark. You return to Rome as a victorious emperor. You expect celebration. You receive applause, but you quickly learn that applause can hide resentment. You ride beneath towering triumphal arches as thousands of citizens cheer your name. They throw flowers into the streets. They shout your titles. Children climb onto their father's shoulders just to catch a glimpse of you. For a moment, you believe Rome finally accepts you. Then you enter the palace. The cheers disappear behind stone walls. The smiles disappear with them. You begin noticing conversations that stop the moment you enter a room. You begin seeing senators whisper behind marble columns before quietly walking away. You begin receiving anonymous letters, sealed without names. Some warn you to trust no one. Others promise that your reign will be short. You burn them all. Yet every night, new ones appear. You tell yourself they are meant to frighten you. Then your food taster suddenly collapses during dinner. The silver cup falls from his hand. Wine spreads across the marble floor. He struggles to breathe. Within moments, he is dead. The physician confirms what everyone already suspects. Poison. The cup was meant for you. You order every servant questioned, every guard investigated, every kitchen searched from floor to ceiling. No one finds the traitor. No one admits knowing anything. You soon realize the most dangerous enemies are not the ones carrying swords. They are the ones smiling across the dinner table. You begin sleeping in different chambers every night. You change your daily routine without warning. You dismiss servants who have served the palace for decades. You trust fewer people each week. Even your closest advisors must wait outside your private chamber, unless you summon them personally. The palace becomes quieter. Not because there are fewer people, but because everyone is afraid to speak. One evening, your oldest advisor requests a private audience. His hair has turned completely white. His hands shake with age. His voice does not. You have defeated foreign enemies, he says. But Rome has always been most dangerous to the men who rule it. He places a sealed scroll before you. Inside is a list of names, senators, generals, wealthy nobles, even one officer of the Praetorian Guard. Men who have secretly pledged themselves to another claimant. Another emperor. You stare at the names for a long moment. Some belong to men who stood beside you during your coronation. Some fought beside you on campaign. Some have dined at your own table. You finally understand what your father never said aloud. The imperial palace is not your home. It is a battlefield. The weapons are simply harder to see. That night, you stand alone on the palace balcony overlooking the lights of Rome. The city sleeps peacefully beneath the stars. It has no idea how close it stands to another civil war. You make your decision before sunrise. You will strike first. Because in Rome, hesitation can be deadlier than betrayal. Tomorrow, the fate of the empire will depend on a choice that history will either call justice or tyranny. Level 6. The Golden Empire. You choose a different path. You decide that fear alone will never keep an empire together. You want Rome to remember your reign, not for executions, but for greatness. You begin rebuilding instead of punishing. You approve new roads that stretch farther than any army can march in a single season. You order engineers to repair aging bridges that have carried Roman legions for generations. You expand aqueducts that deliver fresh water to cities filled with hundreds of thousands of people. You restore temples whose marble columns have weathered decades of sun and rain. You walk through construction sites before sunrise. You speak with architects. You question engineers. You study models carved from wood and stone. You discover that building an empire requires as much patience as defending one. You travel beyond the palace more often. You visit crowded marketplaces, where merchants from Egypt, Hispania, Africa, and Syria bargain in dozens of different languages. You realize that Rome is no longer just a city. It is the center of the world. You watch grain ships glide into the harbor from Egypt. You watch caravans arrive, carrying silk from the east. You watch blacksmiths, potters, and stonemasons transform ordinary materials into the foundations of civilization. Every road seems to lead back to Rome. Every province adds another piece to the empire you now call your own. The people begin speaking your name with admiration instead of uncertainty. Parents tell their children they live during a fortunate age. Merchants celebrate growing trade. Farmers harvest peaceful fields untouched by war. For a while, it feels as though the gods themselves have blessed your reign. Statues of you begin appearing across the empire. Your face is struck onto new silver and gold coins. Your victories are carved into triumphal arches. Poets praise your wisdom. Artists paint your triumphs. Historians begin writing your story while you are still alive. You understand how easily praise can become temptation, so you remind yourself of the lesson your father never stopped repeating. An emperor who believes his own legend will eventually become its victim. One afternoon, a courier arrives from the eastern frontier. His horse is exhausted. His armor is stained with dust from weeks on the road. He kneels before you and presents a sealed military dispatch. You break the imperial seal. Your expression changes instantly. A distant kingdom has rejected Rome's authority. Its king has united neighboring tribes. Its armies are already marching toward the frontier. Peace has come to an end. You slowly roll up the map lying before you. Once again, Rome needs its emperor, and this time, the enemy has been preparing for years. Level 7. The price of legacy. You return to Rome victorious once again. The crowds are larger than ever. They chant your name until it echoes between the marble temples. Golden banners flutter above the streets. Incense burns from every shrine. Children throw flower petals beneath your horse as you ride toward the palace. To the people, you have become the image of Rome itself, but you know something they do not. An empire can survive a war. It cannot survive a weak successor. For the first time, your thoughts begin reaching beyond your own lifetime. You begin searching for the person who will inherit everything you have built. You invite promising young commanders into your court. You watch how they treat servants when no one is looking. You observe how they speak to senators. You notice who listens before speaking, and who speaks before thinking. Power reveals character. Responsibility reveals it even faster. You spend long evenings studying reports beside your most trusted advisors. Maps cover the table once again. Not maps of conquest, maps of the future. You ask yourself the question every emperor eventually faces: who can protect Rome when I no longer can? The answer never comes easily. Every candidate possesses strength. Every candidate carries flaws. Some are brilliant generals. Others are gifted politicians. Some inspire soldiers. Others inspire fear. You begin to understand why so many emperors made terrible choices. Choosing an heir is not choosing the best man. It is choosing the man least likely to destroy everything after you are gone. One evening, you walk alone through the Hall of Emperors. Towering marble statues stand silently on either side. Augustus, Trajan, Hadrian, Marcus Aurelius. Some ruled wisely, some ruled cruelly, some expanded Rome, others nearly destroyed it. Yet every one of them believed their reign would last forever. None of them escaped time. You stop before an unfinished marble pedestal. It has no statue, no inscription, no name. One day, it will belong to you. The realization settles quietly upon your shoulders. Your greatest achievement will never be the battles you won or the cities you built. It will be the future you leave behind. As you leave the hall, a messenger arrives carrying another sealed dispatch. This one is different. It does not come from the frontier. It comes from inside the palace. Someone close to you has betrayed your trust. And this betrayal cannot be solved with an army. Level 8, the final campaign. You discover that the greatest threats to an empire do not always come from beyond its borders. Sometimes, they grow quietly within them. The betrayal reaches deeper than you imagined. A trusted official has been secretly selling military information to Rome's enemies. Bribes have changed hands. Oaths have been broken. Men you once trusted have chosen ambition over honor. You order swift arrests. The conspirators are brought before you in chains. Some beg for mercy. Some deny everything. Some refuse to speak at all. You listen to every accusation. You study every piece of evidence. You remember how quickly power can become cruelty. Justice must never become revenge. Your judgment is firm. The guilty are stripped of their titles. Their wealth is seized. Their names are erased from public honor. Rome watches carefully. The empire is learning what kind of emperor you truly are. Peace returns, but only for a season. Another message arrives from the frontier. This time, the eastern provinces are calling for help. A powerful enemy has crossed the border. Roman forts have fallen. Entire villages are fleeing toward safer cities. Your generals offer to lead the campaign without you. They remind you that you are no longer the young ruler who first marched with the legions. Your hair now carries streaks of gray. Old battle wounds ache before every storm. Your body has begun reminding you that even emperors grow older. You thank your generals, then you refuse their advice. If Rome asks its soldiers to fight, its emperor must be willing to stand beside them. Once again, you leave the eternal city behind. Once again, you ride at the head of thousands of legionaries. The journey feels different this time. The excitement of youth has been replaced by quiet determination. You no longer fight to prove yourself. You fight to protect everything you have spent a lifetime building. The campaign is long. The marches are harder. The nights feel colder. Yet your soldiers never complain when they see you walking beside them instead of riding ahead. They know your victories. Now, they witness your endurance. The final battle begins beneath a crimson sunrise. The enemy charges across the open plain. Roman shields lock together. Standards rise above the ranks. The ground trembles beneath thousands of marching feet. You raise your sword one last time. The legion answers with a roar that shakes the valley. Hours later, the battlefield falls silent. Rome has won again. But victory comes at a cost. As you remove your helmet, you feel a sharp pain spread across your chest. You steady yourself before anyone notices. For the first time in your reign, your greatest enemy is no longer another kingdom. It is time itself. You return to Rome a hero once more. But deep inside, you know this was your final campaign. Soon, you will have to prepare the empire for a future without you. Level 9. The Legend of Rome. You return to Rome beneath skies brighter than you can remember. The city greets you like a man returning from myth. Every street leading to the palace overflows with people. Children climb onto rooftops for a better view. Merchants abandon their stalls. Veteran soldiers stand at attention. Old men remove their caps as you pass. Women scatter flower petals across the road before your horse. You realize something has changed. Years ago, they looked at you with curiosity. Now, they look at you with certainty. You are no longer simply the emperor. You have become Rome itself. You ride beneath towering triumphal arches covered with carvings of your victories. Marble statues bearing your likeness now stand beside those of Augustus and Trajan. Your face appears on coins exchanged in markets thousands of miles apart. From Britannia to Egypt to the deserts of Syria, people who will never meet you know exactly who you are. You walk through the forum one quiet morning without announcing your arrival. You stop beside ordinary citizens listening to a storyteller entertain a crowd. The story is about you. The children listen with wide eyes. The storyteller makes your victories sound even greater than they were. You almost laugh. History has already begun becoming legend, while you are still alive. You spend more time inside the palace now, not because you are weaker, but because your work has changed. You no longer spend your days planning battles. You spend them preparing the future. You invite your chosen heir to sit beside you during meetings of the Senate. You allow him to hear every disagreement, every difficult decision, every impossible choice. You teach him that ruling Rome is not about giving orders. It is about carrying burdens no one else can see. Sometimes, you say nothing at all. You simply allow him to watch, because that is how your own father taught you. You discover that wisdom is not something you speak. It is something you leave behind. As the years pass, your hair grows silver. The cheers outside the palace never grow quieter, but you find yourself listening to them differently. They are no longer celebrating the victories you might achieve. They are celebrating the life you have already lived. One evening, you climb to the highest balcony of the imperial palace. The sun slowly disappears beyond the rooftops of Rome. Smoke rises gently from thousands of homes. The distant laughter of children drifts through the evening air. Temple bells echo across the city. For a long moment, you simply watch. You think about the frightened young boy who once believed power meant wearing a purple robe. You smile. Power was never the robe. It was every sacrifice hidden beneath it. Years later, on a quiet morning, Rome awakens to the news that its emperor has passed peacefully in his sleep. There are no panicked whispers, no struggle for the throne, no civil war, because you prepared for this day long before it arrived. Your chosen heir steps forward. The Senate recognizes him. The Praetorian Guard salutes him. The people accept him. The empire continues, just as you hoped it would. Centuries pass. Empires rise. Empires fall. Marble temples lose their color. Bronze statues weather beneath rain and sun. Yet travelers still walk the roads you restored. Scholars still study the laws you strengthened. Historians still write about the peace you defended. Long after the banners of Rome have disappeared, your name remains. Because the greatest emperors are not remembered for how they died. They are remembered for how they made an empire endure. Your story is over. But your legend has only just begun. Subscribe to this channel if you've watched up to this moment. See you on the next live.